And we're live. Hello, and welcome to Forever Red Devils. This is your latest Manchester United news and updates as we continue to navigate through one of the worst seasons in recent history with very little to get excited about, especially given the current injury crisis we now find ourselves in and the fact that, some of our best players of the season, Ugarte currently injured, Amad Diallo potentially out for many weeks, no Kobe Manu. It's just you can't actually script it, to be honest. You couldn't have scripted a worse United season. Every single time, it's a glimmer of hope, something to hold on to. We take a whole step back, and I think the loss on Sunday really laid bare just how big of an issue, especially given the fact that we lost to a side that we couldn't use the injury issue. We couldn't sit there and say, "Oh well, we've got injuries," because I think Spurs have had more than 50 absentees, more than the next worst so far this season, and yet they come pretty comfortably on Sunday and just look completely toothless. And it just really laid bare just how poor this United squad is. Now, we know that they are not a good squad. We know that we're really struggling. And I don't really see that changing, to be honest. We've got Everton on Saturday, who have not taken any more, have taken more points than anybody else so far in the Premier League since David Moyes has come back. We've got a midweek game next week. We've got Arsenal coming up. But the big thing for me is Fulham on the 2nd of March in the FA Cup. Thankfully, it's at home, but not an easy FA Cup tie. And those are the only things we can really sort of focus on, and then whatever our Europa League looks like. So it's difficult times. And all of a sudden, the sacking rumors are starting to pop up, which is kind of inevitable because when Ruben Amorim took over, United were, I think, 4 points off of top four. Now, that was because of that sort of bounce we had under Ruben Nistelrooy. We won a few games and the likes of that, but we were 4 points off of top four. Ruben Amorim's now taken over, and we now sit 15 points from top four. We've lost 11 points on the top four since Amorim's taken over. And the stats are very, very worrying. And it's so difficult because, you can't just blame Ruben Amorim. First of all, he wasn't backed on the transfer window. Ineos probably more under pressure really than Amorim, given how poor that they've been with backing him and brought in one player. Really, I'm not going to count Aiden Heaven, who's, not really a first team player, but they brought in one player for him. We let a couple bunch of players go out and loan, the likes of that. I mean, his win percent right now with United sits at 42.8%. Less than 43%. You cannot have a Manchester United manager sitting with a 43% win rate. If you look at his win rate, also Sporting is 71, for example, but Braga was 70, almost 77. So it really shows you. I mean, he's won just 9 games of 21 since he's been in charge. He's lost the same amount of games and he's drawn 3 of them. So at this stage, we are losing as often as we are winning with Ruben Amorim. And that is a massive, massive problem. Because this is a United team that, again, even despite being so poor, were only 4 points off the top four. And we've just gone on such a bad run, losing so many stupid games continuously. I mean, Everton were relegation candidates. They sacked the manager. They brought in David Moyes. They're now above us. Everton are above us. We are now closer to the relegation zone than we are to top four. Not even to the top four. It's embarrassing. We're now sitting 8 points away from the top half of the table. That's how bad we've been. And with the injuries and stuff like that, I don't see how we improve. I don't see how things get better, to be perfectly honest. And I've already said that, the season's more or less the write-off. The good news is 35 points is, often, 30 points and above is usually enough to keep you away from relegation. And I think it will be again this season. So, we're still talking about it as being a relegation race, for example. We don't have to worry about that. But there's literally nothing to play for in the Premier League for United. Absolutely nothing. We're not going to get into the top four. We're not going to get probably into the top half of the table. We're going to probably finish up like 11, 12 at absolute best. Unless we go on a tremendous run and maybe we scrape ourselves into like a 9th. But big whoop, what does 9th means nothing to us. It doesn't mean European football. It doesn't mean anything, really. So we've got to basically scrap any sort of Premier League ambition and we've got to go all in on the Cups. And that's difficult because now what do? During the week and during these Premier League games, do you look to rest players? So they're available for Fulham and they're available for the Europa League and the likes of that. Do you look at changing things to try and find systems that potentially work? Because the problem is that you're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If Ruben Amorim rotates and tries different combinations that he wants to try and get right before going into these cup games and we lose, pressure will only grow. You know, I mean, unless there is a literal agreement with him and Ineos that he says, right, listen, the best thing we can do this season is try and win these cups. Therefore, I'm going to try experiment during the Premier League games. It's not going to go well. We might finish 14, 15, but we're going to focus on these cups. And there's an agreement between them that that is the plan. You know, then great. But we'll know our Europa League opponents after Thursday, and get an idea. We play in early March, so we play in about 2 weeks' time. We'll be playing in that Europa League round of 16. So we don't have a lot of time to turn around. We've got the FA Cup match on the 2nd, on that Sunday, and then we play in the Europa League on Thursday, and then in the Europa League the following week. So we've got 3 matches in the next 3 weeks, and those are all that counts. We get through those 3 matches, the season still has something to play for. If we bomb out the FA Cup, if we bomb out the Europa season, that is going to be absolutely massive for Ruben Amorim, because then he's literally come in, been dumped out of 3 competitions, probably earlier than we should have. We should never be going out in the round of 16 in the Europa, for example. We shouldn't be going out to Fulham in the FA Cup. Yes, he's bought himself credit with that Arsenal win, but then you look at what he's done in the Premier League and nothing's happened. And the problem is, again, even if it's not his fault, we have to talk about it as Ruben Amorim, because he's the one that's in charge. He's the one making the big calls. He's the one putting out the teams. And we know that the players are a massive issue. We know the players aren't good enough. We know that the players are not running for him. The players aren't, working really hard. And the form of some of the players are absolutely terrible. But this is still the squad that last year won the FA Cup, by and large. This is still the squad which, after that bounce with Ruben van Nistelrooy, were 4 points off of top 4. And we've regressed. And the problem, I think, at the moment is that what everybody liked about Ruben Amorim initially is what could potentially be his downfall. And that's his stubbornness. And he's got you have to have self-belief as a manager. You 100% have to have self-belief in a manager. I've got no issue whatsoever with the self-belief, with believing himself, with wanting to stick to his systems. But the problem is, you're sitting there being outplayed by lesser teams, and then he turns around and says, I'm not going to change. And everyone's going, well, you're going to have to change. You have to change. We can't be sitting here losing week in, week out, playing like a relegation club, looking like a club which, plays Sunday League. And then the manager afterwards just says, well, I'm not going to change. Because, well, it's not working. Nothing's working. And when you're going to try and do something that might work, it's really, really frustrating. Yes, I know you committed to a system, but we don't have the squad for it. We don't have the players that suit the system you want to play. And if you want to use the Premier League to try and fix that, fine. But you're going to continue having questionable because we're going to keep losing games. But when it comes to the FA Cup and when it comes to the Europa League, there is no excuse to be losing to Fulham. I don't care how good of a season they're having. There is no excuse to be losing to Fulham. You look at that Europa League and we look at potential ties, we should be winning most of them. If we go out in the semi-finals or the final, maybe. But we are good enough to make a decent run in the Europa League with the players we have, if you use them properly and if you can get them firing. And at the moment, we're now sitting as well, just by the way, a week on where Anthony has gotten 3 Man of the Match awards for Real Betis. He's looked like a mini Neymar in La Liga. He scored 3 goals and he had an assist in, I think, 4 games for Real Betis so far. He had 12 goals for United in 96 games. You've got Marcus Rashford, who had a very average debut for Villa in his first game. Second game, he created more chance than anybody else, and they scored off the back of his free kick deflecting. It was a brilliant free kick. And he won a few duels as well. He looked not anything like the Rashford we know he can be, but he looked like a different player. So now you've got these players who have gone on loan, and they're showing you that they're still great players and that they can do a job, whilst we're sitting with Erasmus Højlund. I don't think he scored a goal this year, or 1 goal this year. We've scored 28 goals in 25 appearances in 25 league games so far this season, and we've blanked in 9. We've blanked in 9 Premier League games. That is an atrocious stat. Absolutely atrocious. We've got a striker in Rasmus Højlund who last season scored, 15, 16 goals or whatever it was? Not phenomenal, but not bad for your first season. And this season, he's been absolutely dreadful. You go look at the goals scored, for example, and we have scored 28 goals. The only teams who have scored fewer goals than us are as follows: Everton, Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton. 4 teams in the league. Only 4 teams in the league have scored fewer goals than us. We can only compare ourselves right now to relegation teams. from a stats point of view. Because even those are the teams that outscored us. I mean, Everton, for example, haven't scored as many goals than us, but they've also conceded 4 goals less. You know, they've got 9 draws, 9 wins, and 9 losses and 7 wins. We've got 8 wins, 5 draws, 12 losses. 12 losses in the Premier League. Again, there's only 4 teams in the entire league who have lost more games than us. It is absolutely dreadful. And stubbornness, unfortunately, at a time like this, is not what we need. At the end, I'm all for, as I said, back yourself, back your system. But we cannot let your ego affect what we got for the rest of the season. If you go and sit there and line up with the formation at the moment against Fulham and we get hammered, I'm going to go take you to task. I know the injuries now are a joke, but why? Why have we got so many injuries at the moment? You know, what is going on within the squad? You know, he's talked about the fact that we have to train hard, we have to really work, we have to try and get these players up to fitness. He spoke about the players that weren't fit enough. But what's going on in the training? That in a week, we went from having a reasonably fully fit squad. I mean, when Luke Shaw was coming back, we were sitting there going, well, this is pretty much a fully fit squad. We've lost Sandro Martinez. We lost Eriksson. We had no Ugarte. We had no Collier. We've got no Ahmad for weeks now. We've got no Kobe Manu for weeks now. You know, what is going on? And where have you ever proven, apart from, you know, a penalty shootout against Arsenal, a comeback against City, and that draw against Liverpool? There's probably about but you've probably got 4, maybe 5 games under Ruben's tenure of what, almost 20 already? 21? So we've got maybe a quarter of the games that he's actually managed. Have we actually sat up and gone, yeah, actually there's something happening here. You know, there's actually something being built here. Maybe we're actually onto something. Maybe we can see what we're trying to do. But the problem is that the results aren't showing that. And his comments at the moment, whilst initially was very good, it was quite refreshing to have someone being quite open. Now everyone's turning around saying, yeah, but listen, you're actually kind of part of the problem at the moment and you're not willing to take any responsibility. Or you're talking about how hard your job is. Yes, mate, your job is going to be hard. It's always going to be hard. You know, but that was going to be the whole thing. You're never going to come to United and have an easy job. It was always going to be a difficult job. You know, I don't think people have too much sympathy for the fact that, especially, you know, he came in, you told Ruben van Nistelrooy he had no room for him. So we sacked off a club legend. Cool. You know, we sold, well, not sold, but we loaned out of Marcus Rashford. Fine, cool. If you didn't back him, whatever, you know, but I think it was a bit of an ego thing between the two of them. Cool, whatever. He's gone off to Villa, and we'll see how he's going to do in the Champions League. We loaned out Anthony because we decided we didn't need him, who has now gone on to La Liga and he's shooting goals. And I'm not saying it was the wrong decision to get rid of him. I don't think anybody would complain when he left Anthony. But it's once again another player that has left United and gotten better, or seems to be in terms of the freedom. The only person I think has still been crap is Jadon Sancho, and that's an attitude issue. You know, it doesn't matter where he went. I think, you know, he had a good season at Dortmund, where obviously he's very comfortable and obviously has a good relationship there. But I think there is a serious attitude problem. So before we go to some of the other Rubens, look at some of the transfer news and stuff like that, because that's the thing. We need big transfers this summer, and we need to try and build Ruben Amorim in a squad where he's got no excuse but to do well. JP earlier saying, wrong manager for the squad. Ineos made mistakes. No manager bashing, but squad not suited to his style. It's a moment's team which would have gotten a lot more from a Southgate type manager. Big clean out coming at the end of the season where we can expect 5+ signings. We need it badly. So let's talk about signings. So Gary Neville was talking about the fact, and he's very right. He said that United need 3 transfer windows. And we probably do. You know, we need a full summer transfer window yet now, where we've got to get players out, get players in. We've got to bring in a couple of reinforcements next January, because inevitably when you bring in a couple of players, some of them will work, some of them won't, and you're then got to find more sort of gaps in your squad, and you kind of reinforce in January. And then next season, in summer, you've got to then sort of finalize, build a squad. And after that, you've got to be competitive. You know, we can't be sitting here going, well, we're going to try and win the league and being competitive in the league in 4 or 5 years' time. That's just not an option at the moment. Now, can we get behind an 18-month push? Sure. You know, if we're looking at next season, we're going to finish top 5, 6. That's our aim for next season, is to get back into that sort of top of the table, you know, because we've got the resource to do it. Fine. And then we're going to try and settle there. And then in 2 seasons' time, then we'll say, right, we're going to try and look for a title push. But at the moment, it all just paints a picture of us continuously like this, maybe going a bit of a run next season, but then having a 2-month bad period. Ruben Amorim gets sacked, we pay him millions, we find another manager, we rinse and repeat, we rinse and repeat. And I think the biggest problem now is that people are looking and going, well, is he the right manager? And as soon as we've got that kind of question being asked, that's when you know that we're in trouble. As soon as there's question marks regarding his ability, his system, his attitude, his pedigree, we're in a tough situation, and I don't really see how we get out of it, to be perfectly honest. But if we look at some of the transfers, there is, and to be fair, there is definitely some truth to it, because David Ornstein talked about it as well. So United are currently looking at trying to bring in Giovanni Coenda in the summer, the Portuguese starlet who's coming through. He's 17 years old. And Ornstein has said that United are hoping to try and get an agreement for the 17-year-old, but they're looking at closer to the £33 million mark, where Sporting want £84 million. Now, if we're sitting at 33, they're sitting at 84. I would accept, 45 maximum for a 17-year-old. I still think it's absolutely nuts. But if he's going to be the right player, if you're talking about generational talent, who's ready to come into the squad, but this is the problem: we need players who are ready to come into the squad. One of my biggest frustrations on Sunday was with Ruben Amorim is the fact that we made one change in the 92nd minute, bringing on Chido Obi. It's like things working. At 1-0 down at 65 minutes, 70 minutes, you make a change. I don't care if they're youngsters. I don't care if half of them are making their Premier League debut. Give them a chance. 2-0, 3-0, so what? But maybe you put in a few kids and they actually did the business and actually said, they're saying, well, maybe we actually do this a bit more, Spurs didn't exactly have a team full of veterans. So that also really frustrated me on Sunday. So that, for me, I think is a deal that if they kind of want that kind of money, I don't see us getting over the line. And another worrying one is that there's far and more calls for a Pogba reunion at United, which I think will be an absolute disaster. So Paul Pogba can start playing again, I think it's from March, when his doping ban officially ends. At the moment, he's still not tied down to a club. He's training on his own for the likes of that, but he's, so basically he could be signing a short-term deal until the end of the season. Now, the reason that that's really picked up is the midfield crisis. Over the weekend, no Garte, no Collier. Casemiro now apparently he's come out and said he wants to stay. He said he's very happy in United and he's settled in Manchester. His kids will speak English and then it's all very well. But the fans, I think, are all looking at him going, mate, you're just not quite what we need anymore. You're not at the level that we need him to be at. So, he's more or less our only fit midfielder at the moment. Eriksen also currently out, although hopefully he'll be back soon. Lenny Yoro hopefully back soon. Mason Mount, absolute disaster. And, when he asked about how long is Manu out, he said probably weeks. So we've got no midfield. Now, that's why the rumours about Paul Pogba have really sort of taken another step up, because everybody going, well, that could be a quick fix. But the problem is you've got a guy who hasn't played competitive football in 2 years. Now, I don't care how generational talented you are and how good he can be. There's no chance that Pogba starts next week Sunday or next week Saturday. When do we play? I think it's on Sunday next week. We've got Ipswich on Wednesday. So there's no chance that he comes in and starts against Fulham on the 2nd of March in the FA Cup and just drops a masterclass. Not going to happen. I mean, yes, he's training at the moment, but he's not match fit, for example. He'd have to drop into reserves like that. So the problem is you could probably get him ready, in inverted commas, absolutely earliest in April. In which case, we've got 7 or 8 weeks left by the time he would come in inverted commas. And we don't want him back. We really don't want him back. For me, it'll cause far more issues than good. We've got no idea what type of player. That's the thing. It's one thing handling the ego and all the shit that comes with him when he's an absolute world-class player. We have no idea what he's still like anymore. He could come in and be absolutely garbage. He probably will be, to be perfectly honest. That's the reality, having not played for 2 years. He's going to take a while before he can get himself back to anything that resembles the footballer he once was. So whilst it might look like an easy solution, you're not signing the Paul Pogba that we saw playing for United a few years ago. That's not the player you're going to be getting in. You're getting in a player who has not played competitive football in almost 2 years. Who's mentally been in the dumps with all this crap with extortion with his brother and then the doping, the whole thing. You've got no idea what baggage he's going to arrive at the club with. And that's after the baggage that he always comes with, because he's Paul Pogba and he comes with drama and the likes of that. So, yeah, once again, we're sitting here looking at a club and I just don't see a silver lining. There's big pressure on Ineos as well, saying that they're not supporting the women's side, which is very, very true. We talk about how bad the men's side and stuff like that, but our women's side could be far easily. That I think is the side that you could turn to a competitive side and win trophies quite easily if you put a bit of investment. But because they don't make big money, and that's not one of the big reasons why we're such a big club, Ineos just don't care. And it goes to show you the kind of attitude that Ineos have. So, yeah, I don't really see where the silver linings are and what we can try and salvage out of the season, but it just seems to be one-way traffic, which is really negative. But let me know what you think. What is the important things here? What do we need to try and do? What needs to change? Is it a managerial change? Is it an ownership change? Is it a player overhaul? Is it a system change? What do you think needs to change for United to start finding their way back? Not even back to where we were, but just back to being a half-decent Premier League club once again. Let me know down in the comments.